Hi folks, I'm back here today. I thought we would do a little compare and contrast video comparing what I've been receiving so far through Video Games Monthly compared to Retro Game Treasure. So I started a few months ago recollecting retro video games for the Genesis, Super Nintendo, and the NES. I've been also getting the Japanese imports for the Nintendo systems as well. And as you're going to see here in a moment, I'm going to make a little change, at least with Video Games Monthly, on the systems I'm receiving games for. Now, so far, I've received 3 boxes for Video Games Monthly, only 2 for Retro Game Treasure. I just wanted to let's see the games and for what systems I've received those games thus far. So let's do Video Games Monthly first. And here are the games I've received in those 3 boxes. I do get 4 game box subscription. I have got a couple of 1-ups, so I do have some more games than just the 4. I've received 5 games in a couple of months. So far I've received 1 Super Nintendo game. That was in this previous month's box. Super Bases Loaded. Only Super Nintendo game I've received so far from Video Games Monthly. For the NES, I've received 3 NES games. Those being Legacy of the Wizard, The Adventures of Bayou Billy, and Top Gun. Top Gun and Bayou Billy, pretty common games, cheap games, really. For the Sega Genesis, I've so far received in the box, though it's not the original cover art, Bulls vs. Blazers, which is a kind of mediocre early NBA title for the system. Fantasia, which I just received in my most recent box, which is a very difficult game, lousy controls, and Mortal Kombat 2. So those are the 3 Genesis games I've received. Now, thus far I've received no Famicom games from Video Games Monthly. But now you're going to see why I am taking Super Famicom off as a system I'm receiving games for, because the bulk of the games have been Super Famicom games. And thus far I've received 7 Super Famicom games. Not all bad though. Street Fighter 2, great game. Love Street Fighter 2. And I did want to mention I do use a Retron 3, so I don't have a way to translate the Japanese language. Not a factor in some games such as Street Fighter 2. Other games, it is a factor. I regret not buying a Retron 5, but that's done and over with. I've also received Final Fantasy 4. Can't play it. Don't like RPGs to begin with, but it's also all in Japanese. I've received Dragon Ball Z. This is a fighting game. I'm not a Dragon Ball Z fan, but it's a decent fighter. I don't have a big gripe with that. I've received this baseball game. I don't recall the specific title for it. It's not that great, to be honest with you. I prefer Super Bases Loaded. The controls are really wonky on that baseball game. This previous month, I've received 3 more Super Famicom games. The Super Bass, which is more text heavy than what I anticipated. You have a lot of characters you interact with, and it's kind of become a chore to try to play that. Eventually, I mean, you've got to go through so many screens, and I don't think you can really play the game without having the translation. I also received The Great Battle 3, which was surprisingly the best game out of that box I got. It's a really fun game. It's from Bandai and has Ultraman, some other characters from different anime and shows, and it's a fun game. It's kind of side-scrolling combat game. I mean, it's fun. It's very playable without the translation. And I also received this game. Cannot pronounce it. It has platforming elements, but you also have to go around in this open world and talk to different individuals. Once again, without the translation, not very playable. Platform sections you can of course play, but you really don't know what's going on in the story. It's kind of an odd game. So Yeah, so I've received seven Super Famicom games as compared to 3 NES, 1 Super Nintendo, and 3 Genesis with no Famicom. Too heavy on the Japanese imports. Cutting that off. Next month there will be no Super Famicom games coming from Video Games Monthly. Now let's see what I've got in my 2 boxes so far from Retro Game Treasure. Thus far, I have received 2 Famicom games. Xevious and Tetris. Love both of these games. Translation is no issue. Easily play either of these games. There's no problem with those. Would love to get more Famicom games. I would love to get some from Video Games Monthly. Not got any of those. But these have been two of my favorite games I've received out of either of these boxes. For the Super Nintendo from Retro Game Treasure, I've received NBA Jam, love that game, and The Lion King, which is kind of difficult, but it's a pretty good game. I've received 1 NES game so far, Rad Racer, solid racing title for the NES, and I've received 3 Sega Genesis games from Retro Game Treasure. One being NHLPA Hockey 93 in box. Not a big hockey fan, but I have played it, and actually it's not a bad game. It's kind of a fast-paced, solid hockey title. And I've also received NBA Showdown 94, mediocre NBA game, and Toy Story, which is a pretty fun game as well. So recap with Retro Game Treasure, I've received 2 Famicom, 2 SNES, 1 NES, 3 Sega Genesis. More balanced, I think, across all the systems as compared to Video Games Monthly, which is skewered very heavily Super Famicom. I've received no Super Famicom from Retro Game Treasure. So comparing and contrasting the two, I think, in my opinion, I like what I've got from Retro Game Treasure more than what I've got from Video Games Monthly so far. Love the Famicom games. Both Super Nintendo games are good. Like the Rad Racer for NES. Toy Story is a fun Genesis game. The sports games, I mean, they're okay. There's nothing wrong with either one of those. Look at Video Games Monthly, 7 Super Famicom games. Only 3 of them I really can play and enjoy, which would be Street Fighter II, the Dragon Ball Z fighting game, and The Great Battle, which has been a big surprise for me. It's a really good game. The Final Fantasy IV cannot play. Baseball game, do not like. This game cannot play as well without the translation, and Super Bass kind of running into that issue with the translations, lack of translation. So probably going to look into selling those 4. Probably be listing those on Facebook Marketplace or somewhere and try to move those 4 Super Famicom games out. And I've got a couple of Genesis games, Mortal Kombat 2 and Fantasia, which are fine. Only 1 Super Nintendo game, the mediocre baseball games were base loaded, and I've received, 3 NES games, nothing stellar there, and only 1 Genesis game, and it was Bulls vs. Blazers. So yeah, Retro Game Treasure probably beating out Video Games Monthly right now as far as quality of games I'm getting. So Super Famicom, say goodbye. They will not be coming for the foreseeable future in my Video Games Monthly boxes. Too many, 7. 3 boxes is just way too many of those. So let's see what I can get with removing those from my systems list. So I appreciate you folks watching. Thank you very much. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the games I received. If you agree that maybe you didn't get a little bit better value out of Retro Game Treasure so far. But I'll be back in a few weeks with another unboxing. Retro Game Treasure will be coming in a couple weeks, and we'll see what they send me for the month of November. See you later.